All right, welcome everybody. We're glad to have you join us for this week's Andrews webinar. Today is going to be a little different than the last few, as we are pleased to present a violin performance by Simon Luke Brown titled Eine Kleine Quarentinemusik, a little quarantine music. Simon Luke Brown is a sophomore studying violin performance at Andrews University. He is a composer and conductor in addition to being a violinist, and his list of accomplishments so far include being soloist with the Oklahoma City Philharmonic, concertmaster of the Andrews University Symphony Orchestra, Oklahoma Youth Orchestra, and the Oklahoma Summer Arts Institute. He's been a composition student of Jerod Tate and a two-time member of the National Youth Orchestra of the United States. He was also accepted into the Aspen Music Festival and School and played with the Prague Summer Nights Festival in 2019. Although this is a performance, Simon Luke Brown will be available afterward to answer a few questions. So for those of you viewing this live, feel free to type your questions into the Zoom chat or message us a Facebook comment, and we'll be happy to share your question with him. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Simon Luke Brown.
Welcome, everybody. I'm very pleased and honored to be presenting some pieces for you. We're going to have fun in this little concert here. It's the selection of music for violin solo, true solo, is a little bit narrow sometimes. Usually we are playing with a piano or another ensemble, but there are some fun pieces that I have in store for you. The first one on this program is a composition by Georg Philipp Telemann. Now, Telemann was one of the most renowned composers of his day. Less so today. Today he's overshadowed by his colleague, J.S. Bach, from whom we'll hear a little bit later. But Telemann set a number of standards for German Baroque composers, and writing solo violin music was actually one of those. His 12 fantasias for solo violin influenced violin music, solo violin music written by later composers, including Bach. And so I'm going to play for you the first of these little fantasias. It's in 3 movements. And I'm sorry I couldn't be in a more acoustically resonant environment for you to hear some of the gloriousness of the sound that he creates. But I think that what we have here will suffice, and you'll still enjoy it. This is a Fantasia in the key of B flat major by Telemann. That was Georg Philipp Telemann. So I'm going to move ahead a few years. These pieces are not going to be in chronological order. This next piece comes from a set of music that every student violinist hates. And sorry, my computer's acting up for a moment. Oh dear. I have to offer a warning. I realize that my computer has low battery and I do not have access to a charger, so I'm worried that I may go off the air for a moment, and I apologize in advance if that happens, but I'll play you what I can before it dies. I did not foresee this. This is a little embarrassing. Anyway, next on the program, Paganini. Paganini was one of the greatest violinists the world has ever seen, and his music testifies to that. It's very hard, but if you can get through it, it's honestly a lot of fun because it's very flamboyant and extroverted and gives every violinist a little bit of a chance to have some fun with their skills. So I'm going to play you one of his 24 caprices. This is caprice number 17 in the key of E flat major. And I envision this caprice as being very operatic. There's a kind of a drama to it that gives it a little bit of character and spice and makes it very fun to play. So hope you enjoyed this one. I always enjoy playing that one. Okay, so next on the program, I think what I'm going to do is play something for you from a rather unlikely place. Usually when musicians talk about etudes, it's with a roll of the eyes, because etudes are designed to be exercises or things to help you get better, not necessarily designed for concert pieces. There are exceptions, but generally that's true. However, one particularly influential violin pedagogue, who's a Belgian fellow from about the early to mid half of the 19th century. His name was Matsas. He published some etudes that are still widely used today, and he decided that the student slaving away over rather uninspiring music in their etudes was not something that he wanted to partake in, and he was kind enough to make his etudes more like little character pieces. And that's certainly the case with the one I'm about to play you. In each of these etudes, he has techniques that the violinist is supposed to be working on and developing. That's the whole point of the etude. And there are two in particular that are very fun to play with, and that's left-hand pizzicato. So pizzicato is, as opposed to playing with the bow, you pluck the string, right? Usually we do it with the right hand, but there is a technique called left-hand pizzicato where you do it with this hand, which is much less natural and a lot more difficult. And then the other technique that he has you play with is harmonics, which is where it's a special effect on the string. It sounds like, and very ethereal sounding. I hope you can hear it well through the speaker. Both of those are designed to be worked on in this piece. And so I'm going to play it for you and hope that you enjoy it. Let's see here. What shall we do next? I think what I'm going to play for you next is what you could say is the Bible of unaccompanied violin repertoire. And that's a selection from the 6 sonatas and partitas by J.S. Bach. These were inspired, in part at least, by the Telemann Fantasia that I played for you earlier, but they've become much more standard. Every college audition, every orchestra audition, any kind of audition you want has to have some kind of unaccompanied Bach on them. And there's a reason for that. They're really very beautiful compositions. What I'm going to play for you is the Sarabande and its double, which is a variation of the Sarabande. And this is from the first partita. It's in the key of B minor. Was Bach. And I'm getting another notification that my battery is low, so warnings for that in advance in case something goes awry. What I'd like to play with, to close this little concert with, is a piece by Rudolf Kreutzer. Kreutzer is another etude writer. That's what he's known for today. And his etudes are much less pleasant to play than Matzah's. But there's one exception. This has got to be one of my favorite etudes. It's the only one in this whole set of etudes that has a subtitle. And the subtitle of this one is March. And he was alive in revolutionary France time. And there was all kinds of patriotic and militaristic music inspiring him, as well as contemporaries like Beethoven. And this perhaps might have been a subset of that. March in E-flat major by Rudolf Kreutzer. Music by Rudolf Kreutzer. All right, then. I think that will conclude this concert. I believe we'll be transitioning to a question and answer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Glad to hear your computer battery has been holding out so far, Simon.
Yeah.
And great performance. All right, for everybody watching live, you can go ahead and type your questions into the chat on Zoom or message us through Facebook, and we'll ask Simon Luke Brown. So to start with, as a performer, how do you put your own interpretation on a piece and make it personal to you?
Well, I think that having a knowledge of the composer, the background, any stories that the piece were, that any stories behind the composition of the piece, those are always useful tools in understanding how to approach it from a historical, musical informed perspective. But it's a personal choice in the sense that you look at this phrase, you sing it to yourself. Oh, this phrase should go that way, I think. I think it would be most effective if it were approached through this lens. Or, you say, this passage seems very distraught, very sad. It gets you right here. I really need to bring that out. How can I bring that out? Oh, I can use this type of vibrato. I can play in this part of the bow. I should play at this dynamic level, this kind of bow stroke. All these things come together, and there's so many factors that there's no way it will line up with what anybody else is doing, or perhaps even what anybody else has done before. So.
All right. So we have one question from a viewer. What's your personal opinion on when and why did J.S. Bach's reputation overtake that of Telemann?
Oh, wow. This is a good question. Let's see here. I'm kind of spinning off of what I remember. I haven't actually done any proper research on the subject, but by at least Beethoven's day, Bach's keyboard music in particular was, especially the well-tempered clavier, was being taught by the good teachers. Beethoven grew up playing the well-tempered clavier. And also I think that J.S. Bach's sons did a significant amount. Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach worked in the court of Frederick the Great, and I think was able to publicize some of the music of his father there. But really, when it really takes over, all of Bach's music becomes canon, is really, I think, by the work of Felix Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn, of course, with his historic performance of the St. Matthew Passion, kind of resurrected Bach back to the real pinnacle that he never really has left. And Telemann didn't seem to have the kind of disciples that did that, or at least he hasn't yet. And you never know, it might happen one day. But there's a wonderful story that I love to tell about Bach and Telemann. There were some musicologists who were examining some cantatas written by Telemann and some cantatas written by Bach. And they were going on and on about how the Bach cantatas, this is fairly recent, the Bach cantatas were excellent for XXX reason, and the Telemann cantatas were not as good quality. And then they found out that they had been duped, and that Telemann actually composed the Bach cantata that they were studying, and vice versa. So there is a certain amount of what we've been brought up to think when you're examining music. So never take anything for granted.
All right. The next question is, what do you plan to do with your music degree?
Oh dear. I ask myself this question every day. It's nothing's ever sure when you're doing music. You have to be willing to do a lot of things. My desire is to perform, at least for a while.
All right. I think that Simon Luke Brown's computer charger finally gave out here. So we're going to go ahead and just thank Simon Luke Brown very much for his performance today and for answering a couple of questions. And let's go ahead and talk about what's coming up next for the next Andrews webinar. So we would like to invite you on Thursday, May 7 at 5:30 p.m. Eastern for a talk about Finding Wellness in Difficult Times by Adam Meadows. who graduated from Andrews in 2004. Dr. Meadows is a board-certified psychiatrist who has been with Skyland Trail, a nonprofit mental health treatment organization based in Atlanta, since 2016. Dr. Meadows graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's in biology from Andrews University and received his medical degree from Washington University in the St. Louis School of Medicine. He completed his psychiatry residency at the University of Pennsylvania, where he served as chief resident in his final year. His clinical interests include mood disorders, adult ADHD, and mental health concerns affecting college and graduate students. Dr. Meadows is passionate about making a positive impact in people's lives and is committed to efforts to improve social dialogue and reduce stigma around mental health issues. So we hope to see you next Thursday for, again, Finding Wellness in Difficult Times. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time.